All right, Trails Collective Live. Ian here with this round of. I should have said, hello, Trails Collective community. Ian here with the weekly Trails Collective Live episode. It is wonderful to have you. For those who are tuning in live, it's always good to have your voices, have your questions, have your comments. So if you are so inspired, for sure, drop those into the comment box. The Trails Collective's YouTube channel, which is streaming live too, is a good place to drop those comments. It is also streaming on my personal Facebook page as well as the Trails Collective's Facebook page. And it'll also be up wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Ellie Pell out there for being on and translating it to podcast form after the fact. So feel free to, even if you're not catching it live, to drop comments in there. We may get them after. And so the purpose of the Trails Collective when I started it was to really have an avenue to celebrate what is such an amazing trail running community. I felt like too often the media was just slanted toward maybe just big national or world events that didn't necessarily weave in the voices on a regional or functional basis. Here in this episode this evening, I am going to be turning toward the global and national stage, but also weaving in Northeast or Beast Coast voices in doing so. But ultimately, I just really wanted to celebrate and bring together what is a really amazing community, whether it be runners or RDs or trail maintainers or nonprofits or coaches. There's just so many things that that really that we can highlight. And in a world that is increasingly divided or too divisive, I felt like in my experience that trail running is an avenue that really does bring us together, that a lot of the differences or things that we create or that are fabricated around us to divide us kind of fall away. And we can really value the relationships in the community and the shared efforts that we put down on trails. And so that's really what I hope the Trails Collective can be. And I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for any who tune in, who drop comments, who share it in their own feeds, to those who take the extra step of just kicking in a few bucks or whatever it is a month to become a Patreon supporter. It's very much appreciated. And we'll try to turn it around and bringing you voices from the trail, events from the trail, and trying where I can to give exposure to maybe individuals and events that may not get it otherwise. So I'm pretty stoked for this round. We are going to spend the first hour or so digging into the Snowman Race, and really excited to have two friends on with Luis Escobar and Sarah Kais. And I'm really looking forward to such a rich event. We'll just see where the dialogue goes. And then in the second hour or so, we'll bring on Devon Yanko and Riley Brady, who just both had phenomenal runs out at Javalina, both earning themselves golden tickets for Western in June. So that's going to be pretty consuming for this evening. There are a couple events that just happened in the Beast Coast, on the Beast Coast here, and particularly Northeast just this past weekend. And I'm going to weave some of those voices into next week's episode. And rather than necessarily going long, we'll try to get into a number of events next week and bringing in you maybe like a dozen voices. So I'll look forward to that as well. All right, so let's go ahead and start with weaving in Luis and Sarah. And as I just mentioned before we logged on here, it's so good to see you both.
Yeah.
And so, Luis, there you go. So Luis, I think maybe you first mentioned the Snowman Race when we were out in California, maybe for Western, as something that you were working on. And for those who don't know, Luis and I go back a little ways at this point. He does his own podcast called the Road Dog Podcast. For sure, check that out. A number of really awesome and intriguing guests there, and just hearing you comment, Luis, on some of the other, I think, written pieces, but even in the piece I listened to this morning that you linked to the other podcast where you talked about the Snowman Race, I even heard some of your prior interviews, I feel like, colored in some of the things you said in that. And so for those who haven't checked out the Road Dog Podcast, take a listen, because I see that it shaped you, Luis, and you've had a really cool number of guests there. So Luis is coming to us from cool California. He and I first met in me jumping in to pace him for the inaugural Hurt 100, as well as I think the third year of the Hurt 100. He was dates back to the original Team Montreal. If we want to date that far back, Sarah, well ahead of your time, I think, at this point, and a number of beastly finishes on his own. I think he was given quite a bit of celebrity status in being woven into the book Born to Run, and being part of what ended up being really the family down in the Copper Canyon, and celebrating being part of that community down with the Tarahumara. So I think it's total outlier to have you be the one reached out to take on this other just incredible endeavor, which was the Snowman Race. And so I'll stop talking here in a second, but that was a intro a bit to Luis. And then for Sarah Kaiser is coming into us from Saranac Lake, New York. She is a incredible mountain endurance athlete. She is a nurse on the side, a little bit of a shoe guru just for the fun of it at the Fallen Arch in Lake Placid. She is a nurse that probably could be reflecting on all of the altitude sickness experiences that you just did on your own, and the severity of those things, but a truly incredible athlete. She is a race director on her own as well, was co-RD with me for the Whiteface mountain races, and hopefully taking up that mantle here in the year to come. But a truly incredible individual and athlete, and it is good to have you both on.
Thanks for that intro. Yeah, happy to be here.
Totally.
Yeah, hell of an intro, Ian.
Yeah.
You are a good talker, man. I enjoy just listening to you speak. Thank you.
I tend to say too many times, and my apologies. For sure, that was something that came up a lot when I was running for Congress, and they'd play all the things back with captions, and it's amazing how much I say but otherwise it's just kind of fun.
Well, I think you do a great job. Thanks for having me here. Totally.
And so, Luis, tell me again, you first mentioned it. I think that was the first time you mentioned it back in California. Where'd this come from? Why you, Snowman Race? Give us the overview of where it came from out of left field, and whether you were just like, yeah, like, let's do this, or like, yo, like that just sounds crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, all of that. And before I say anything, I just seeing Sarah here is awesome. We just spent 3 weeks together, a whole group of us traveling through the Kingdom of Bhutan. Sarah and I had some extraordinary experiences together. Some of the stuff that happened, Ian, I don't even know that we can put words to it. It was just so incredible. And everything I'm about to tell you, and maybe some of the things that Sarah is about to share with you, is going to sound unbelievable and contrived. And it's not. All this stuff happened to us. It's just been an amazing experience. The Snowman Race is an event. It's a first-year event. Just happened. Started October 13th, 2022, 6 a.m. at a place called Gasazong, deep in the heart of the Bhutanese Himalayan mountain range, right below Tibet, right on the Chinese border. It was a 5-day stage race, about 210 kilometers total, approximately a marathon a day for 5 days. And it was created. It's the dream, and it's the vision, and it's the directive of His Majesty, the King of Bhutan. And that sounds pretty crazy in itself, but it's absolutely true. The King of Bhutan is passionate about the Snowman Trek, which is a trail that goes through the Bhutanese Himalaya. He's an outdoorsman. He's a conservationist. He's an ecologist. He's concerned about the mountains. He's concerned about climate change and climate action. And he's concerned about what's happening in the Himalaya in terms of climate change. And they're seeing these massive glaciers coming apart and melting, and giant lakes are overflowing, and the rivers are swollen, and there's been broken dams, and people have been killed recently, and they believe it's due to climate change. And so the King of Bhutan decides that he's going to put his passion for the trail and the outdoors, and he's going to put that together with his concerns about climate change. And he came up with this idea of creating a running event. Of all things, we're going to invite trail runners from all around the world to experience the Snowman Trek and to go into the mountains and see with your own minds, with your own eyes, your own hearts, see what's happening up there. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a meteorologist or a geologist to go there and stand in front of these mountains and see that they're falling apart. It's reality. So the Snowman Race was created by the King of Bhutan as a vehicle to create awareness about what's happening there. And it's working, Ian. Here I am right now talking to you and Sarah, to what I assume is an American audience, and you're hearing this stuff, and it's reality. That's where the concept of the race came from. Sarah, just based on that, what do you think? What am I saying? Is this making sense?
Absolutely. And it's so wonderful to see your face, actually.
Yeah.
So as soon as I got home, I tested positive for COVID. So I have been very isolated. I'm actually in my basement currently where we have good Wi-Fi, so it's really nice to see familiar faces and have a conversation like this. But yeah, totally. I mean, so I was only brought on in July of this year to do this event. And so I feel like I had a kind of short window to like absorb anything I could about the country, which wasn't very much, to be honest, before I got there. And so when I arrived, it was pretty much with just an open mind of like, we'll see what this is all about. And it was, without even having expectations, everything was blown like just way larger than I ever could have imagined. Like I have raced all over the world, and I think this, we all joked that like, what do we do now? I think we all just retire from racing because there's nothing that can compare to this. And yeah, I did another actually little interview today. And so she asked me like, so why did the king choose runners? Right. Like, and this was a question Lewis asked us to ask everyone we met too, why us? Why runners that are kind of like these people who obviously already love nature and probably, like do things on our own for climate change. And so a lot of us were like, well, yeah, why bring us all the way here for this? But, and I find it starts with one human being, and making these changes that can then grow into this exponential conversation that like, hopefully somebody might view this today and say, oh, I've always wanted to go to Bhutan and I would like to go see what's happening there. Or just say like, I want to make a difference in my community so that those people in Bhutan that are literally all the way around the world don't, maybe in a generation from now can rest a little easier, that they don't have a landslide coming towards their home or something like that. But yeah, we can get into more of that. But yeah, totally, Lewis. That's yeah.
So, and we'll probably take some tangents and then circle back, but just on something that you just said, Sarah, in terms of like why us, one of the comments that you made in and we can cite it here. What was the source that you shared? It was something coming from Bhutan, or Bhutan. What was the other podcast that people could look for, Luis, that you texted Sarah and I this morning?
Yeah. So the night that I left after being there for the entire month of October, rolled into town from a place called Laya, and then was quickly on a podcast, like literally 10 minutes out of a truck. I'm on a podcast, and the podcast is called Hello from Bhutan. And it's the largest podcast that the country produces. I was pretty honored to be part of that. So yeah, Hello from Bhutan.
And for those who are out there, take it in. I think it was like a half hour, 35 minutes interview. And it was just really nice, and also gives a feel, and we'll touch on some of those concepts as well. But one of the things that you mentioned, Luis, which was maybe something I referenced in the opening, you made a comment, and I forget how the interviewer teed you in for the answer, but you commented on just the spirituality of trail running. And so in terms of Sarah, you saying, why trail runners, and this was, and for my association, Luis, I really enjoyed one of your interviews earlier with Billy Mills I on your Road Dog podcast, and him from the background for just Native American spirituality, that is like, I forget what his quote was, but there is no like higher spiritual activity than trail running. I mean, you're just running over the earth and with the earth. And so for the concept of, and I guess it could be hikers and it could be whatever, but I don't know. I think I would tend to agree in terms of how I'm experiencing a place and absorbing a place and respecting a place and feeling a place. And not that you can't feel things hiking, but if I'm running up a hill, I'm that much more aware of how big that hill is or how steep that hill is if I'm just like hiking. And so I would imagine the grandeur of the landscape was appreciated that much more in pulling in trail runners.
Well, it's pretty grand, Ian. It's the Himalaya. So yeah. And what I had said, the host of that podcast, she said something like, kind of like, oh, I would think that trail running is kind of a spiritual thing. And I'm like, no, it's not kind of a spiritual thing. It's the spiritual thing. And then I stole the line from my Tarahumara friends. And that's something like when we run on the earth and we run with the earth, we become part of it. You're not just running through the landscape, you become part of the landscape. And that's, I think, what I was saying in that interview. Yeah, man, it's grand. Sarah, what did you think? How did it strike you? Were those big mountains?
The biggest I have ever seen, for sure. Biggest I've ever experienced. I think, but it was pretty wild in that, like, yeah, because we're trail running, you still feel like it was somewhat manageable. You're in there, you're just being a part of that landscape. I think that's a great way to put it. And like we weren't summiting peaks, but we were going over, like, the highest I got was 17,000 foot pass, which will probably be the highest I'll ever be in my life, and it felt like just not necessarily being anywhere else. It was everything and nothing, like, because you're just one foot in front of the other, but you're also like trying to take in that this is some place where I will probably never ever touch again.
Yeah. Ian, let me explain to your listeners where Bhutan is.
Didn't you say on that podcast, isn't it just right next to the Philippines?
Yeah, exactly. When Bhutan came onto my radar in 2017, I was invited to go there for another running project, and I need to thank my friend Scott Jurek for taking me along with him to Bhutan in 2017. And that's how I got involved. But when he first contacted me and said, hey, we're going to go to Bhutan and do this project, I'm like, cool. I thought that it was in the Philippines. I had no idea where Bhutan was, never heard of it. And of course, now it's become a very important part of my life. I've been there 4 times. I probably spent a total of 3 months there altogether. But Bhutan is a very small country, and it's located right below China and India. So it's kind of in this corner. It's in the eastern Himalaya, so almost directly below what used to be Tibet. And it's one of the smallest countries in the world. The population is less than 800,000 people. It is one of 2 of the only carbon negative countries in the world. I think Costa Rica and the Kingdom of Bhutan are carbon negative, which means that their forests absorb or metabolize, or I'm not sure what the right word is, more carbon than they produce. And so this is the weird thing about climate change and Bhutan, is the people that live there are doing everything right. They're intentionally living a life to not produce carbon and not to contribute to climate change. Yet they're the first ones that are experiencing it. They're right between these 2 massive countries, and they, even though they have nothing to do with it, they're the ones that are paying the price. And so that was part of the message that we were tasked to bring out and share with the world.
So when I think that something that you also mentioned on the the podcast this morning, or that was released, that you shared with me this morning, was that they're very intentional, I think, about finding really amazing ambassadors for the sports that would end up being, I think, to take away the message, to celebrate the message, to connect with. And truly individuals that have really kind of large audiences, and a lot of people very much respect their voices. But there was still that piece of me, you know, like, yeah, and this was, sorry, I kind of talk tangent back and forth. So, and I'll message as part of this. So Sarah, I think maybe before the Bhutan race, I think that, I forget, and you can comment on, there was some, I think, more talk in some of the running circles and media about athletes maybe staying more local about, or maybe being more conscientious about traveling to races. And so, of course, there's that 5%, whatever it is of my brain that says, oh, we're, you know, Bhutan's putting on a race and it's to highlight climate change. And I'm like, well, why the hell are they flying you over there? Like, I mean, they may have been carbon neutral before, but I'm pretty sure your and Luis's flights just kind of tip it over like the other edge there. So I guess kind of where's that balance in terms of, you know, and this was something, I don't know, it's probably, you know, dating myself as well again, but I think when Al Gore back in the day or a couple decades ago or whenever that was racing all around the country, showing his, you know, environmental film, like whole time I was like, dude, you're like going from one airport to the other. Is there not like a, you know, less impactful way to do this for your cause? And so similarly, like you're creating a race, yet you're bringing people from around the world into, I don't know, couldn't you just made like a Facebook post with like this glacier melting and like, hey, we're good here. Like, this is what's happening.
Well, I'll take a little bit of that because I felt that, you know, as an athlete, like I have always felt that, I guess, about traveling and flying and right, what is my impact to kind of sustain this like semi career that I've created. And especially so for this, like literally the opposite side of the world, right? And like the amount of fuel that is burned by like my first flight from Boston to Seoul was 16 hours. You know, I mean, that's like a huge, huge flight. And so I did, you know, grapple with that a little bit, but there are programs out there that you can do buy carbon offsets. And so I've been doing that for a long time with all my flights, you know, depending if it's out to California or right to Bhutan, to Bangkok. So there are, you know, things you can do to help offset your personal carbon footprint. Like there's a calculator, you go on, you know, it tells you what you like per year you're producing just by living your normal life and driving to work and whatnot. But you can also do it like per flight as well. So it was like maybe cost me $50 to offset my carbon for that flight. So really not bad considering. So I was very happy to do that part, you know, the portion in order to get there. And then, you know, like the going forward here, you know, and it wasn't a huge field, right? We had 29 athletes that started and 11 of those were from Bhutan. So they were in country. So it's not like, you know, I guess if you count the couple of extra race folks that we had, like Lewis and Thomas and some other people that were there too. But so it wasn't like a huge field of people that are, you know, traveling into the country. But that being said, like, I think we are an impactful bunch that can get our message out, hopefully in the way that they would like us to. So that's my take. Lewis, what do you think?
Yeah, same thing. So obviously we're creating an event to create awareness about climate action and climate change, yet we're flying, you know, 25 people from different parts of the world. So yeah, that doesn't match, right? But it's something that they considered, and there were measures taken to try to offset that. One of the things is we encouraged the athletes to use an app called the Capture app, and this tracks all of your travel, and then it can calculate the carbon that was expended, and then they offer ways that you can offset that. In addition to that, some of the athletes were working with nonprofits, environmental groups here in the U.S. I know one particular, Gabriel Garcia from San Luis Obispo, was working with the Santa Maria Valley Open Space, which is a trail advocacy group there in northern Santa Barbara County. They use Gabe's Capture app information, and then they helped offset that by planting trees in California. So it was, at least it's a gesture, right? And then also when we were there, we didn't plant trees as a group, but trees were planted in Bhutan on our behalf. And then we were one afternoon introduced to our trees, and then we nurtured our trees. And again, I understand, Ian, that that's just a gesture. It's like we're trying to do something. What you had said, why couldn't we just put on a Facebook post and just say, hey, this is happening? Ian, would you have responded? Would I be talking to you right now?
No, absolutely not. Right. But
yeah. So I'm not defending it. I mean, for sure, it's something that we need to consider if we're going to move forward. But I think that the mission of the event is being achieved. The goal of creating awareness is happening. All of the athletes that were selected to be there are not just did not just have the athletic ability and the resources and the time to go there, but more importantly, they came with an open mind and open heart. And when we selected them, we knew that they were the type of people that were going to arrive and depart as messengers for what's happening there in Bhutan.
Yeah. So let's maybe talk, because it's such a, you've mentioned the grandiosity of the landscape itself, but I think it was also the production in some ways. So let's maybe talk a little bit about the team. Let's talk a little bit about the course, and then some of the efforts at large, and maybe some of the individuals there as well. So one of the, as I was following some of your live posts, Luis, during the event, and some of the images that you were putting out, was just kind of the tactical command center of the production. So, which was just impressive. I mean, I've been to some races where they have like a trailer full of wilderness search and rescues monitoring and radio controls, but this was just kind of like next level. I shouldn't say like, I mean, this was just next level from, and this was to your point of put on by the country itself. So you've got the military, you've got the meteorologists, you've got any number of, talk a bit about just the grand scope of what it took to, I guess, pull this off, and the team that was assembled to do it.
And it was super scary. When I went there to talk to the Bhutanese government and the board of directors, when I went there the first time in 2019, and they had, they were sharing this idea. We want to put on this trail run, and it's going to be on the Snowman Trek, and it's right through the heart of the Himalaya, and it's these giant mountains, and can you help us do it? What do we have to do? What do we need to know? I said, well, the first thing you need to know is that safety is the number one priority, not just for the athletes, but for all of the staff that's going to be out there. This is going to require a lot of people and a lot of resources to make this happen correctly and safely. They had never done anything like this before, Ian. And so my role was to go there as a consultant and just open their eyes, teach them, show them what we expect from a race here in the US, and safety being the number one concern. So as we met many times over the last couple of years, and well, I would say something like, what about communications? We're going to need to be able to, each one of the aid stations is going to need to talk to the other, and then they need to talk to a home base somewhere. How can we make that happen? And their answer was, well, the Royal Bhutanese Army, we have ways of communicating in the mountains. So they created a radio network through this incredible wilderness. And then that was all controlled at the Bhutanese Royal Army base in the city capital, the capital city of Thimphu. The other thing was, Ian, we learned from what happened in China with that event, where weather became out of control and an issue. And so when that happened, we started meeting again. How do we prevent this? Well, we prevent this by understanding the weather every single day. Every day at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m., we need to have a comprehensive weather forecast from an official weather, what's the right word? An organization. So immediately the Bhutanese government, we were using their weather organization, and they produced forecasts every single day. So as we went along, then tracking, we need to be able to track the athletes. So we hired track leaders, and we put GPS devices, Spot Gen 3s on all of the athletes. So then we needed sweepers out on the race course, people to be out there patrolling and making sure that everybody was safe. Ian, it just one thing led to another. The next thing you know, the entire government is behind this event. So it wasn't just me and my friends putting this on. It was me and my friends helping and consulting and working alongside of the Bhutanese government. There was more than 120 people on the race course, not counting the runners. This was support staff, Army personnel. There were 4, they call them night halts. Which is an aid station.
I think we should all start calling our race station night halts.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So there was 4 night halts, and each night halt was staffed by a professional trekking outfitting company. So there was as many as 15 to 20 people, cooks, porters, Sherpas, horsemen. Each of the night halts had a minimum of 25 to 30 horses that carried all of the supplies in, tents, kitchens. There was a medical doctor and a medical advisor at every single one of the night halts. We had helicopters not at our disposal, but they were available for emergencies. It was a gigantic production, Ian. Lots and lots of people, lots of different agencies, and the Bhutanese government, the board of directors, they took this thing very seriously, and they produced a world-class trail running event in the middle of nowhere, and they made it out of just the resources that they had. It was, and it continues to be, incredible. What do you think, Sarah?
And I was going to go there too. I mean, Sarah, you've seen your share of races. You've seen your, firsthand as a mountain athlete, the challenges that go into that, even just some of your own personal efforts in the mountains. I mean, you can for sure relate to a lot of those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, this is a totally different animal. Like, I don't think it belongs in the same grouping as like just saying a mountain race. Like, I haven't done stage racing prior to this, so this was new to me to so I can't compare it to that. But comparing it to doing a 100-mile event, in the wilderness, say like in the mountains, this is like just a totally different thing. And having those sorts of resources, I mean, I don't know that it would be possible without that.
No,
I don't think it could safely occur without having the government backing like that.
I think it could have happened, but it would have been a mess. And, having them there as just more than a safety net, they were in full control. We needed their help. We could not have done it without the Bhutanese government, for sure.
Well, let's maybe take that as a thread. It'll be a little bit out of order where I just placed it in my head a few minutes ago. But even, I mean, Sarah, you as a case example in terms of how your event shook out. And I mean, talk a little bit about that. And in terms of all right, let's wait just a minute. So, Luis and Sarah, you could both chime in on just lay us out the course, because I mean, the intensity of the course and the metrics then fed into just what you ran into, Sarah, out in terms of how that played out and how it impacted you. So you can both talk a little bit about how the course lays out and some of the metrics of it.
Well, if I can, I see that there's a chat here. I'm not sure how to access it, but I can put a link in the chat right now to a Cal Topo map, and the listeners can check it out right now and see where we were and take a look at the course. I don't know if you can help me do that, Ian, or if I put it in the private chat, maybe you can share it.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
All right. So I just sent that. So yeah, it was over 200 kilometers. It's a big chunk of what they call the Snowman Trek, which is a classic trail that they have running right through the mountains there. And this was the heart of the Snowman Trek. Like I said, there were 4 night halts. So there was the start, 4 night halts, and then the finish. It's a point-to-point course. It's about 34,000 feet, I think, total. I could be wrong with that. There was quite a bit of gain over the course of just over a
I think it might have been a little more. I want to say it was closer to like maybe 44.
Oh, okay. The big concern at the beginning was weather. It was rainy and cold and wet when we arrived, but luckily the weather did break and things turned out to be pretty good in terms of weather. The course itself, it's not a recreational trail. Ian, which is unique. It's not the AT, it's not the Pacific Crest Trail. It's a utilitarian trail, right? It's like centuries old. This is a route that horsemen and yak herders use to move across the mountains. So it's not a trail that was designed for mountain biking or hiking. It's just the most elegant point to point that they can make to move goods and services across these mountains. The course itself is super chewed up from horses and mules. It's rocky. It's very, very muddy in the lowlands. So that's like the first thing that's always present that the athletes have to deal with, is the fact that the tread of the trail is just a mess. The second really big thing, of course, is the altitude. It starts at over 9,000 feet, tops out at just under 18,000. The average, I believe it's about 14,000 feet is the average elevation throughout the entire course. So you've got this really chewed up race course, high elevation, multiple passes over 16, 17,000 feet. And then the big factor is the remoteness. It's far away from anything. There's no way to get a car or a truck or a motorcycle or a bicycle or anything like that onto the race course. The only way to access these places is on foot. There's literally people there in the communities of Laya and Lunana who've been there their entire lives, and they've never, ever seen a car, ever. They're just there existing in the mountains. And so we ran right through all of that. So the course itself, it's long, it's high, it's rocky, and it's super remote. And those present a lot of challenges for creating a trail running event.
And then for you, Sarah, how that shook out? I mean, you were, even if you didn't, well, I guess you didn't have a whole lot of time to process it, not necessarily, I think, prepare. I think your fitness has been returning, right, this year. You took a pretty dedicated effort out ahead of the race. What, you spent like a week or two out west and up in the mountains a little bit more as an effort to maybe get higher and put in some longer efforts. And so you're aware of the metrics going in, but how it ends up just going once you get there and how it went.
Yeah. So I did take about 2 weeks actually in Colorado right before going to Bhutan. So I went to Colorado for 2 weeks, came home for like basically 2 days, packed while I was here, and then left and went straight to Bhutan. I live here in the Adirondacks at about 1,200 feet in elevation. So for me, that was my biggest concern, was being at that altitude and how, if I could perform. And it turns out not really. But so I felt like I had acclimated in Colorado when I showed up. Part of this experience, and which maybe I was not really aware of, was how much of a like cultural experience it would be prior. Like, it wasn't just a race, we weren't, and which is part of the appeal too, though. I guess I did, I got a schedule. I kind of knew what was going to happen, but that was part of the appeal. Like, man, I don't have to really worry about anything. I just get to Bangkok, get on the plane, and then the rest of it is all done, which is incredible. The amount of work that went in by those folks that were putting that stuff together is pretty amazing. But because of that, we were all probably at like 7,500 feet or so, Lewis, for like the first 8 days. I guess we were in country probably. Which for me ended up, I probably just lost most of whatever I could have gained in Colorado. And so when we went from the first day of running, actually, the first day of the event was mostly runnable terrain, which was kind of nice. We had a lot of dirt road, which was kind of a surprise. I didn't expect that. And so I felt great and was able to move real well. And I did almost probably like half the distance in like 3 hours. And I was like, man, this is flying by.
I'm gonna sail through this.
Awesome. And then, then
it got real.
Then it got a little real. It got real muddy, actually. I have never, so the Adirondacks are kind of well known for having pretty rough mud season. Like, we get terrible mud and shoulder seasons are rough. And so I was like, I can handle this. This is no problem. And it was beyond anything I have ever experienced. So people from the East Coast that know the Adirondack mud, this was like, I don't have anything to compare it to. I mean, it was like sometimes like thigh deep, like water, but like clay and like trying to run downhill on it was just like, forget about it. Like there were several occasions where I just like almost went off into a ravine because I was trying to run. I was like, well, let's slow it down. There's no need to like try to claw my way back out of there. Like it's almost like it's like rainforest until you just get past that tree line, where then it's like this amazing Himalayan alpine environment. So, within that first day, I felt quite good and moved really well. Was really just enjoying being out there and like actually moving and running. We had done so much as a group together. It actually kind of felt nice to be alone for a little while out there, and just to kind of experiencing it in my own way. And so I did start to feel the altitude that first day as we ascended up, around 14,000 feet. And it was pretty amazing up there that, like it was snowing a little bit, moody skies. And I got a little bit of like the weeble wobbles, being at that high altitude, hit 15,000 feet, and was pretty happy I had hiking poles to kind of steady myself. But was just super psyched to be up there. And that first night, our night halt was at 16,200 feet, and was like in an amazing location. There's a really amazing photo that I took when I went to go pee in the middle of the night.
It is beautiful.
It was incredible. I was like, I like could not believe I was able to get a good photo, but like super psyched I had my phone in my pocket and that I actually had crawled my way out of the tent at like 2 a.m. or whatever it was. And so like those are the types of memories that, obviously I'll hold on to, which are pretty incredible. But I felt quite good, like, obviously a little bit like lightheaded, but as expected. I think with that type of gain, it was about 10,000 feet of elevation gain that first day. So from 9,500 feet or so up to 16,000. Was able to sleep. I was able to eat. I had an appetite. Felt quite good, and was psyched for the next day. The following morning, we hit immediately, basically, in the first like mile and a half, a 17,000 foot pass. It was beautiful, clear skies. We had received so many blessings, I think, in all the temples on right before this race, that they brought us like the best weather that we could have ever hoped for. And so the view from that 17,000 foot pass was just incredible. There's photos out there of it, but you could see.
And this is one, sorry, it took me a little bit slow on the uptake, but can you see the screen there?
Yep.
Are you able? Okay.
Yeah, that's our, that was night halt 1, the view right there from our tent, which is pretty incredible. I will say, actually, while I was, when I finished that day, after I was like, they're bringing us soup and tea, whatever I wanted. Like I sat down in a chair and someone would come over and offer me hot tea, like immediately. And anytime it was empty, there was a refill, which was pretty amazing. But as I'm sitting there, there's like literally ice falling off of those glaciers. We could hear it happening. And so that, like is an obvious reason why we were out there, is to experience those things and be able to like be here now to tell you about it. So unfortunately, the next day I felt pretty good. We descended a good, that's Brian Powell took that photo.
That's just right incredible. I mean, in so many ways. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. Yeah, right. Like that's it's amazing.
And you get that high alpine. I mean, I guess my only experience is a couple trips up to Alaska and being up in fairly unused and just following like herd paths. But I mean, just looking at the kind of the silt and the sand and seeing that more and more exposed, and if there are climate change, then it suddenly, I mean, that's just a whole different scape in terms of silt, in terms of mud, in terms of water, and in so many ways. It's just so stark.
And the really cool thing, like we'd be running along and then all of a sudden here's like a pack of 10 horses like coming at you, and you're like, oh, sorry, I got to move out of the way. But things we found, like that mud also, their monsoon season has changed, right? Like it's gotten longer. There's more rain. It's a bit wetter. It's affecting these people who it's their daily lives, that they're, using these utilitarian trails to bring supplies to these villages. The only way, so the night halt 2 was in the Lunana Valley, like after this long descent. I, at this point, had already like started feeling the effects of altitude, which was kind of interesting because I'd come down now to about 13,000 feet and felt worse. You know, and it was getting kind of hot during the day. I was trying my best to keep food going in, but I was getting nauseous. And so by the time I was descending towards the night halt, I had already been vomiting and was feeling quite rough. It was descending into the valley, and I would sit down. Yeah, there I am. This was at a 15,000 foot pass, so the high point for the day, which took me about I think 75 minutes to go a mile to get up there. And I would we joked,
which got to make you feel good about yourself. 75-minute mile. I mean, that's the peak of American fitness right there.
Yes,
actually.
yeah. I would literally go. I would find a flat rock and lay down flat on my back. And try to take in some food. I'd feel terrible, and then I'd walk another 15 feet and do the exact same thing. At some point I saw a helicopter go over and I was like, I'm right here.
Yeah, that's me actually. I'm here.
I'm here. So eventually and actually it was really kind of fun though, as I'm descending down and feeling horrible and sitting and resting. I would stop long enough that I could hear all of a sudden there would be a yak close by, and I could hear him making noises. That'd be my my cue to keep moving. But as I got down in the valley, got to the night halt, this was in the medical tent there. And I kind of knew at that point that my race was probably over.
I'm not sure why. I mean, you look good there in the photo. I mean, you look like things are looking up. I mean, you got a little bit of soup there. Just take a potato and maybe a pierogi and just kind of get on out of that aid station.
Yeah. Sorry,
it's okay. You have COVID. We'll lend you the,
It took me a long time to make it into that night hall. I luckily actually never needed my headlamp though. I did make it there, just as it was sort of too dark. And I was coming in as there's a school there, and all of the school children, this is a school night too, mind you, were putting on some kind of play, and traditional.
And just this crazy, delirious, staggering American just kind of staggers on the stage and just kind of collapses, and
yeah, they're singing and dancing, and and that was also what this experience is still out of this world, because you had all of these people who are just so excited to see these vomiting, dehydrated, crawling American who they're just so psyched I'm there, and in that valley specifically, there's about 900 people that live there. The only way in and out, and I took a helicopter out, is by foot, and they either come the way we did, which means going up over a 17,000 foot pass and a 15,000 foot pass after basically going through a river. These trails have you can see that White River there basically, right? We kind of end up just traversing through there, for miles and miles at the base of that valley. Yeah, this is the view from that base of the 17,000 foot pass. So yeah, you get in via foot the way we went, or you come over another access point. I was talking to one of the staff about that is glaciated still, may not be glaciated in the future, but they don't take horses that way because of the glaciers currently. So yeah, these people are just there, and it was it's pretty amazing. It took them, the doctor there who lives in the village, super nice guy, spent a lot of time with me, was really obviously, concerned, wanted to be sure I was okay. I think I made him all a bit nervous when I told him I do this for a living as well at the starting IVs, and it took him 5 tries to get an IV in me. But it was pretty wild to have that experience, and see how they do medicine in the field. But it was great. They did a wonderful job, and felt really confident in their skills, and they were looking out for me. They got another medical MD on the phone also, just to double check everything, just because, make sure that she didn't have another idea of something to do. So and then the interesting thing was they, that night they, brought me soup and were checking me, and they said, it's your choice. I think you're it's not an eminent thing that you currently need more assistance than what you're receiving. so tomorrow, like, it is your choice, but we think you probably should not continue. And they also had the head of the army for that section kind of came in and told me the same thing and described the rest of the course, and being that the next day, the third day, was the highest pass up to 18,000 feet. And there really was no way to get down from there. So there was nothing below tree line until day 4. If I got worse, there and weather moved in, there was no way to get me out. And then, so I'm thinking about it in my head as I'm laying there, like, I don't want to put these people at risk, right? Like Lewis was saying, there was 120 people out on course who aren't runners, who are just there to like make sure that I can slowly walk over this mountain pass. And it's not fair to them to put them in that position to try to like have to worry about rescuing me. So originally we were told that it might be like an 8-day hike out if we were to have dropped at that location. And as soon as I was in the tent, Luke Nelson, who was our team captain, came in and said, well, it's just so you know, there is a helicopter option. So that kind of, helped make my decision as well. And then when I woke up, we all were to wake up at 4 a.m. is when our days would start. And at 4 a.m., they were bringing tea around to each tent, just delivery, tent service. And when I woke up for that, I still felt pretty nauseous, actually. And so that was my choice. There really was, no option after that except to take the helicopter. And from there, I still had an amazing experience after coming out, but we can talk about that too. So that was how my race went, but it was hard. It was very difficult, saying goodbye to those friends that I had made in the morning as I watched them leave without me was, like pretty hard,
And I don't know whether it was this poster, another one where you commented on it, but just relayed that, I guess you had the benefit when you got back that His Majesty the King, they arrived and you got to meet, but also just in meeting some of those on the back end in the operations room where they had chosen you as kind of like their, the chosen one. And you're like, well, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah. I think, well, so the first day I did finish first female, which I think was surprising to some of those folks in the command center, possibly. And I think that was only because I was able to run the road section, I think, well. And so I think after that, some of them were like, oh, she might do well. And so, yeah, some of them lost some money. But oh well, it was amazing to be able to meet them, like as they're doing their thing there at the command center. And that is like what makes this race again like a different thing than any other race that I've ever been a part of, is that each of us had several people just watching our blue dots and creating these algorithms. Like it's similar to like the UTMB style of mapping, right? Where they're like projecting where I'm going to be in, and what time I might arrive at the next checkpoint. And they had made their own algorithm to do all of that. And so it's pretty amazing to see.
And those who may be listening, I just also plugged, sorry, we're talking about some of the photos that I'm putting up on the screen and sharing here, but one of them at the moment is one of the photos of the command center, which I had referenced earlier, where Lewis, it was pretty cool having you just go through and be taking images of this. And I don't know, like all the people that are like, I don't know, just that dude standing there looking at that like big map. And then right next to him is just like this picture of like maybe like a prior king or whatever. It's just like this whole thing is just this whole other magnificent place. And just the depth of it is just pretty wild.
Yeah. What you're looking at there, those portraits, those are former kings. That's the third and the fourth king. Big portraits of them. This is in the Royal Bhutanese Army base camp, and they dedicated this room to the event, and they dedicated all of these people to the event. And they took it and they take it very, very seriously. The safety of the athletes and the staff on the course was the number one priority. And these people were tasked with these jobs, and they were proud to have these jobs, and they took it very seriously. They arrive every morning at the command center just after 5 a.m. They would stay every day until each of the runners were completed or accounted for. So they would leave this room at around 10:30 or 11 p.m. and then they were right back again at 5:15 the next day. They did that for 5 days consecutively, and they were happy to do it. This is why this event was a success, is because some of these people that you see right here.
So maybe as we're relating and just hearing of how it shook out for Sarah, and with the just physiological complications of jumping up, I mean, you arrived at this high mountain community where the kids are just getting out of school and like playing with probably red blood cell counts just kind of like through the roof, whereas this kind of, you know, this American, it can't hold her altitude, rather kind of staggers in or whatever. I guess that dovetails into maybe just talking about a bit about the quality of the field. And this was mentioned, some, Luis, you've talked about this, the selection races they had for those who would represent or be able to participate from Bhutan. And then as I was watching some of the live leaderboards as well, I saw the first day and second day. And Sarah, you had mentioned early on also that it wouldn't necessarily be a race per se in some regards, just being the stage formatted up through the mountains, and it was going to be what it was going to be. But I think that it was interesting to see some of the Bhutanese athletes and some of the others, just how far out there they were, and just the level of athleticism, but also adaptation to that environment. I guess speak a bit to that.
Well, if you're talking to me, I'd love to talk about that. So the Bhutanese people and the athletes also took this race very seriously. They came to win. Mm-hmm. They prepared to win, and they won. And they had a selection process. They had a series of qualification races, and then ultimately they knew that they were going to get that down to was it 5 men and 3 women. And they were top notch. They are top notch. Most of them are members of the Royal Bhutanese Army Special Forces. They're serious mountain people. They're serious mountain athletes. And I can't wait for the opportunity to help bring some of these athletes here to the US or to Europe to compete on a different stage. Most of the folks in Bhutan, it's hard for them to get in and out of the country. So you've never heard of any of these guys. You've never heard of Gawa or Sangay or Singay, but you might eventually see them, you know, hopefully at Leadville or Hard Rock or something like that at some point soon. Incredible athletes. So yeah, they came to win, Ian, and they weren't fooling around, and they went straight to the front and they held it. And it was awesome to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say, you know, I was concerned, like the men's selection race did do the full course, Luis, or did they?
No,
several days.
Yeah, they did what they called a calibration run in 2018, and they weren't sure if somebody could even do this. Could somebody cover this distance in 5 days? So they had, again, a series of qualification races, and they came up with 7 Bhutanese men, and they lined them up, put trackers on them, and said, okay, you know, we'll see you in 5 days. And they did it. They did get through the course in 5 days. They got lost a lot, but they were able to cover it. So that was the beginning of it, Sarah, the calibration run in 2018. And then what you're about to talk about was more recently.
Well, and then, right, so the women also had a competition run, but their event was only 2 days. So they spent 1 night in the field. And so, you know, it was really amazing to see, like, they trained together. We had a wonderful woman, Vivi, who is actually in her 50s, but you would never know it. She looks like she's like younger than me. And so she trained with these athletes over the last couple of years. And so she would, you know, was very well-spoken in English. And so she would explain to us, like, these girls have never done this before. You know, there were 4 girls who, some of them were quite young. I think 24 was the youngest. And so she, you know, had done one event where she was out overnight, but never something like this. And they did amazing. Like, I'm blown away at how well they handled, like, you know, I was trying to like help them out prior and tell them, like, you know, blister care, right? Like, this is going to be wet, and it's going to be, your feet are going to be in rough shape by the end of this, which is okay. But like, if you need to stop in the beginning, take your shoes off, tape it up, like things like that. They did not have any real insight into nutrition. They've never used like goo products before, which Magda was a part of this event, and so she ended up bringing a bunch of goo for use on course. So we were able to give that to some of the athletes to use, and they could have it on the course. So, the sheer like fitness and mental strength that I witnessed out of these folks and the army personnel and just the Bhutanese people in general was like just so impressive. Yeah.
So let's take a minute or just a minute there, because as you're talking, I also I just get hesitant to know what's this I don't know, like kind of greater than thou mindset or whatever. Like, so as you're talking about the different things that you're like, I think I saw one picture of maybe Luke going over using like the GPS watches. And then Sarah, you just mentioned like blister care, and then mentioned like the nutritional products. I don't know how big tech is over there. I don't know whether there's the brand presence, whether you can, I don't know, whatever. Maybe there's just not that stuff over there in terms of like, you're not going to go to a store that sells a Koros watch or, whatever it is. But like, I'm assuming that being like mountain individuals, that their bodies are already somewhat adapted in terms of the blister sense, or that they have these own remedies that they've been doing forever that they don't necessarily need the same like blister care, or even like the nutrition. I'm assuming their nutrition, their diet is different and they're more accustomed to the high altitude. Do they have like their own nutritional supplements that doesn't need to be like a goo? Do they need a goo?
Ian, this is a great subject. Yeah. And this is, the same when I originally traveled to Mexico and started, interacting with the Tarahumara people, and we come there like, oh, you need these shoes, you need these socks, you need this gel, you need this watch. You know what? They've been doing pretty good for about 600 years without any of that stuff. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. These people, these Bhutanese people, these are mountain people. They don't shop at REI, Ian. They don't have any of the stuff that we have. None of them are on, well, maybe they are on Strava. I don't think so. They're mountain people. And same thing with the Tarahumara. They're doing just fine with the diet that they have and with the way that they run and the way that they recreate. Here's the interesting thing, Ian. The Bhutanese people will not drink what they call wild water. They will not drink out of a stream or a lake or a river. They believe that, well, I'm not exactly sure what they believe, but they believe that drinking wild water encourages mountain sickness. So they won't do it. So they only were drinking boiled water for the entire distance. The international athletes were filtering water and drinking it. But that's just one of the interesting kind of quirks of the Bhutanese people.
Which totally makes sense in that regard, right? If you've never had a Sawyer filter to, drop in your pocket or whatever, then, that's probably a good thing. So what about just like diet? Sarah, you have referenced maybe a couple times, or maybe it was a post, or maybe Luis, you mentioned it, getting in there and having rice and some other things. What was the going fare, and then what were the Bhutanese athletes fueling with, like, during the stages? What was their go-to that would have been in their pocket or something?
So yeah, the food available, it was an incredible spread, very fresh, really, I've been trying to incorporate, it's tough with COVID to go shopping and incorporate these things at home, but really hoping to continue a lot of that trend here. But on course, I know some of them use things like honey with they use sort of like a flour. They just sort of make their own high carb, high sugar type of trail food. They tend to want to stop and eat a lunch and continue on. They offered us every morning to take with us a hard-boiled egg and a boiled potato, wrapped in foil. I don't know that any of the international athletes.
Why did they not? Like why? Like I don't need that potato and that actually good nourishment. Like I gotta do. Like this has like 100 calories. It's got like some caffeine, and I'm good here over that potato.
Yeah. And but like once you got to the night halts, like they had a whole kitchen set up where they're making us like sauteed vegetables with rice, some kind of protein, usually like a chicken, and they always had some kind of chili or something, to make it spicy. A lot of spice in that country. But in the mornings there was like oatmeal, eggs. I mean there was like, it was just like a regular kitchen. But yeah, so I was very impressed. They also all carry, the Bhutanese athletes all carried like a hard-sided thermos with them too. Like they weren't just running with like these soft.
And they don't even have Body Glide. Like how does that even work?
They're like, they always want to have a hot drink with them, and they carry it in a regular old insulated thermos. Yeah.
So a lot of rice, Ian, white rice, red rice, saffron rice, buckwheat at the higher elevations where rice doesn't grow. Sarah said honey, some fruit, apples grow in some places. So we see a lot of apples there, potatoes. They're Buddhist, so there's not a lot of meat products, but you might find chicken. And then of course, anything that has to do with yak. So the hot tea that they're drinking, mostly it's either milk tea, which is tea with yak milk, or butter tea, which is tea with yak fat. And that's what they're living on, especially in the high altitudes.
So let's go there, and then we'll start seeing if we can get to a transition, even though it would be fun to talk for this next hour on how that we can, as American capitalists here, package what they were just making and turn it into the next goo flavor for next year.
A butter tea goo. Yeah.
Butter tea. When I had Chris Roberts on and we were chatting last week after the bigs, he has his own nutrition product, and he was mentioning as he really got up in miles, it was really going with like cream of wheat, and I was like, you really need to, that should be the next year's flavor, should just be like cream of wheat like flavor there. But let's bring up this photo, since Luis, I think when I had you on earlier a year or so ago, when we went long earlier in the year, it was fun just dipping into your photos, and I think it was always fun to see your reaction as I pulled up a photo. This one is specific to the race, though. Tell us why it's not. Hang on, let me bring up the photo. I'm getting there. Listeners, bear with me here. And Devon and Riley, thanks for being on in that back end too. It's good to see you, and we will transition in a minute. So the hang on, almost there.
Can I, while you're looking for that, can I say Devon and Riley? Holy shit, man. Great race.
Let's
this is the silliest photo I've ever seen in my life.
I'm gonna counter you there and say actually I've seen a lot sillier photos with you in them.
Okay, maybe.
And, so
here's Devon and Riley. Wow.
So tell us why it's not smart to fall asleep on your yak.
There's a whole story that goes with this, and it's going to sound like I'm making this up, but I'm not. And I think that Sarah was there. We had the honor and the privilege of having an audience with His Majesty the King during the race. So probably day 2 or 3, some of us, part of the production team, we got invited to meet with him, and Sarah was there as part of that. And I don't know, we were talking about going to Laya and participating in the Royal Highland Festival, which happened after the race. And I told His Majesty the King that, you know what I really want to do is ride a yak. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, we can make that happen. No problem. I really? So, he sort of promised that I would ride a yak. And then he said, but listen, the most important thing about riding a yak, listen to me carefully, never fall asleep on a yak. I'm like, okay, it sounds like some pretty good advice. And he said that they move so smoothly and so calmly that after a while you fall asleep. He said every time he gets on a yak, he falls asleep. He warned me not to do that. So, okay, that's stuck with me. I'm never going to forget that phrase. In fact, if I ever write a book, that's going to be the title, Never Fall Asleep on a Yak. And then after the race, a week or so later, I did have the opportunity to travel up to Laya and participate in this festival. And there he was again, His Majesty the King. And we ended up talking.
Just passed out on this yak.
No. And so he said, "Hey, do you still want to ride a yak?" And I'm like, "Of course I want to ride a yak." And he's like, "Okay." And he just turned around to some of the folks behind him and he's like said something in Bhutanese. And the next thing I know, myself and the members of our team were riding yaks. And I was certain not to fall asleep. And so there I am, looking as silly as I could possibly look on a yak in Laya, Bhutan. Yeah, pretty weird.
I think it looks pretty Teddy Roosevelt, actually.
Yes.
To me on that.
Yeah, it does.
Which for Devon and you with the hat that you were wearing on the podium, which was, I forget the first word, but something about getting rid of the patriarchy or the
smash the patriarchy.
Smash the patriarchy. Like this just screams patriarchy to me, like in that photo in terms of the Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah.
It's pretty silly, man.
Well, oh God, if you guys aren't all already connected to Luis on at least in life, but on Facebook at least you should really, because the amount of ridiculous photos, your life is a pretty grand adventure, man. And you've had some pretty awesome experiences, but some of the photos are just like, what is going on in those?
Ian, my cameras and my running have taken me all around the world and put me in front of a lot of very interesting people like all of you right here. And I'm very, very grateful. And before I go, Ian, I just want to say thank you to the team that went with me to help produce the Snowman Race. So Brian Powell from I Run Far, he was the manager of Night Halt 1. My friend Chris Clemens, who's still there, by the way. Chris has been with me for a long time. Yeah, he's not leaving. He was at Night Halt 2. It took him 6 days to hike into his location. He was there almost 3 full weeks. So thank you, Chris. And then my friend Manly Klassen was at Night Halt 3. And then Magdalena Bollet from Q Energies and Western States fame. She was, and everything else that she's done. She was at Night Halt 4. And my friend Tomas Reese from San Luis Obispo was acting as our athlete manager. So all of them were there to help make this thing a success. And yak rider. And then, of course, I just want to finally say thank you to all the athletes that trusted me and took me seriously. And a thank you to the board of directors and the secretariat. And of course, His Majesty, the King of Bhutan. Incredible experience. And I believe in creating opportunities for people, and so do they. And
so where does this go from here? What's the future of the Snowman Race?
It was, and it continues to be a success. I think that all of the goals were met, and I believe that they are going to produce another event. I'm not sure if it'll be in 2023 or 24, but I think we can look forward to it. And I hope that I'm involved. And if you're listening, and if you're an athlete, and if the issues of climate change resonates with you, reach out to me directly and see if we can get you into this race. It's my name, Luis, Luis, at snowmanrace.org. Right on.
Well, it was incredible. It was fun to follow along. Sarah, great job out there. I'm sorry that your body didn't respond at altitude like maybe you'd hoped it would have.
It's all right. I think before we even started the race, it was already worth it. It's already worth being there. It was an incredible experience.
And some of your photos too. And I could keep sharing some of those, but even at, I think it was like a prayer wheel wall, and some of you with the team, and just being surrounded by that community, watching the video of Simon coming in and all the people in that community around him, just such a meaningful moment. And knowing again, we could keep going, but the individuals that were invited in terms of just the salt of the earth type people, and him being one, it was pretty incredible all around just to see it all go down. So thank you.
Hey, I'm going to jump off and watch you guys on Facebook Live here. And before I go, just Devon, Riley, it's an honor to be seeing you, and congratulations. I was watching all of that, and it was just an amazing run. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right on. All right, Sarah, Luis, I will talk to you guys both hopefully later.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. All right, Riley, Devon, good to have you. Thanks for taking a cut out of your night. Riley, how was welding tonight?
It was pretty good. I'm like getting close to my test, so things are moving pretty well, I think.
Solid. That will be an excellent skill set to have there. So you're going to apply it to building some, repairing some Trek bikes and welding the frame, or what you going to do?
Yeah, I want to get into frame building. Not really so much the repair side of things, but I want to get out of anything that is customer facing, if I'm being honest.
That's fair. There are a lot of people that make those days not worth it. Devon, your background in owning a business and having a bakery, there's 90% of the people you love and 10% just, gosh, come on, people.
Yeah, it's amazing how overwhelming that 10% can be.
Yeah, and I guess the same thing with anything in life. I guess races too, right? You get the 80-20 rule or whatever, like 80% people are just awesome, and 20%, man, just suck the life out of you, want you to crawl.
Or like social media, totally how social media is. You're like, really? That's what you decided to message me on? It's
yeah,
cool.
And well done in distancing yourself a bit from social media this past year or two. It makes it tougher for me trying to track you down and keep tabs, but well done in taking that step. And Riley, you've held your own in fending off social media in some regards over the years, which makes sponsorship and contracts and outreach, yeah, maybe a little bit tougher, but nice work in terms of the health aspect of it. All right, so for those tuning in, we are shifting gears and heading to Javalina, switching from Bhutan to Arizona. In this case, joining us are both Riley Brady and Devon Yanko. Riley is coming at us from New Hope, PA, where they work as a turning cranks at a Trek bike shop. They've been crushing East Coast races from the Uber Endurance lineup to Vermont to Cayuga Trails to U-Rock for a few years, while knocking at the door of more competitive national fields at Black Canyon, Bandera, and now nailing that effort at Javalina. Devon is one of the most competitive endurance runners of the past couple decades. Of the 74 results in Ultra signup, 70 are trophies, including a third at Western States, several top 10s at Comrades, at least 7 times on the U.S. teams for road. In this past April, crushing Umstead for a new course record of 14:23, and now another Javelina win and Western berth. She comes to us from a newer home based outside of Salida, Colorado, where she has been an active on a new farm, works at the local bakery, and coaches through Chosky Coaching. She has an active Substack called Devon's Dispatch and Women of Distance podcast with Allison Naney, and monthly since 2021, highlighting the women of mountain trail, ultra, and road. So pretty rich life there at the moment, and it sounds like the where you're at the moment. Hopefully the world is, after the year you've had, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit, and hopefully the world is just good at the moment. Hopefully the farm is awesome. You love where you're at. Hopefully things are gelling at least this week in life at the moment.
Yeah, I think this has been a pretty good week.
It's good. All right. So Javelina. And so this was, I think it was Canadian or Canada Ultra Running. I forget what or Canadian Ultra Magazine, or I'm forgetting their actual name. They do really good, I think, reporting and a nice quality job on the media front. So I'm just going to pull for those who are not already tuned into Javelina and how it went down. It's one of 7 golden ticket races, granted the top 2 men and women entry into Western States 100. It was a deep men's field. Dakota Jones set a new course record, running 12:58 for the first sub 13-hour finish ever. Jones was followed by Boulder's Jonathan Ray, finishing a third fastest time ever in 13:05. Arlen Glick of Ohio, winner of the 2021 race, rounded out the podium at 13:25. Both Ray and Jones have accepted their golden tickets for 2023 Western. The women's race boasted a field no less accomplished. 2 top positions were, I think, hard to predict. It was interesting hearing some of the pre-race predictions pan out or play out, rather. Triathlete Heather Jackson of Oregon recently took 16th place finish at Ironman World Championships in Kona, led the way for much of the race in her first ever ultra. Jackson was eventually overtaken by Devon. and who led the women for the win in 14:36. Yeah, so it was a deep field, competitive ultra. I am going to get into, hopefully we just have a kind of somewhat of a loose dialogue here in conversation. I do have just some questions I can put out, and we'll just see where they'll go. But Devon and Riley, it is good to have you both on here. All right. First question to both. And for those listening, for sure, feel free to drop some questions or commenting. Ellie, thanks for weighing here at the moment. I got to say, Ellie, a much more civil tone than you were throwing down
on Twitter.
On Twitter.
I'm not even on Twitter, and I know what she said on Twitter. So.
Yeah, and for those who don't know Ellie, that's kind of how she rolls, but it seemed to get a little bit of attention this past weekend. But very civil, must say, y'all but have the best hair in ultra running at the moment. Very aero. So we'll just see how long Ellie keeps it civil here, and we'll just see how the night rolls on here. So to both of you, at times, did you find yourself second? Because I feel like this is probably the most important things that really the viewers and listeners really want to know about Javelina. So I'm going to start here. So to both of you, at times, did you find yourself second guessing the commitment to the golden ticket and instead just switching into the race for best ass award category?
Well, after I passed Bob Hearn in a thong, I knew that there was no chance for me. So yeah, just had to stick with the going as fast as I could.
Yeah. In some cases, maybe even faster to get away from.
I will have to tell you that when I did pass him, I was with my pacer, Sandy, and she had mentioned that he was out there and we're coming up upon him. And I was like, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to tell him he has a really nice hat on. And so I run up and I go, hey, you have a really nice hat. And he just started dying. Like, I'm sure he thought I was going to say something else. And I was like, he was wearing like a really nice sun, situation. So.
And hopefully if he was in a bad spot, then he just got to spend the next whole 20-mile loop just thinking about, what does that say about, do I not look good? Like, is it he just starts kind of questioning life as a whole at that point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Riley, any second guesses there?
Nope, can't say that I did. I was impressed though by the fact that he had on such an impressive hat and basically nothing else. It's like, well, at least you got your head and neck protected from the sun. I don't know about the rest.
It's such an interesting choice to be like completely naked, except for I'm like, why did you opt in for the hat if like your ass is going to be on fire?
Yeah.
All right. So as a follow-up, so I guess comment a bit about the draw toward Javelina and just the community and just what it is, right? Because you have this really deep competitive field. You got the incentive of the tickets, which go with that. But it's also just a blend of just a big trail party for the weekend and just kind of the culture of the event.
Yeah, I'll go first if that's okay. There were kind of a few reasons. You listed them a little bit right there for me. Golden ticket was definitely a draw. And the fact that it was 100 miles was a draw for me because I think I'm a little stronger at the 100-mile distance than something like 100K. But Halloween is also my favorite holiday. So Javelina has been on my radar for a long time as like definitely a bucket list race to do just because of like the Halloween party. And now it's on my bucket list of races to come and volunteer and hang out at so that I can actually experience more of the party. But yeah, the culture there is pretty sweet.
Yeah, and I actually didn't, when I signed up for Javelina, I wasn't actually considering a golden ticket. That's not why I signed up. It was part of my plan to run 500 milers this summer. And when my plan kind of took a very steep nosedive into the ground, I still showed up with the same attitude. Like, I'm here because I don't know what kind of day I'm going to have given my recent health stuff. Like, I want to be around my people and my community and like have a party vibe so that if I am having a hard time, like that I'm around, like I'm still motivated, whether I'm like at the back of the pack or the front of the pack. And so like, even once like the golden ticket was in my sights, I was like, not even like thinking about it. Even, I mean, when Riley was next to me when Jubilee came up to me, then like the board ceremony was like, so you're taking the golden ticket? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I haven't decided. Like, didn't actually think about it.
Can you give me a minute? Like, come on, like this just happened.
I was like, I have some time. I was like, I'm not saying no. Like, I'm not like I wasn't ready to like say no, but I wasn't there for that purpose.
Yeah. So you both ran pretty awesome races. Devon, you took it out. I mean, you're just a competitive individual. You've got the wheels. And maybe for one of your Substacks, maybe it was a Substack post before, like the week before the race, in terms of just being free in some regards. Like, it shed a lot of maybe the weight, the expectation. You're just going to be in the moment and you're just going to take it for what it is. But in being so fast, and so for those, in case I didn't mention it, I mean, Devon, in addition to all the wins, you're just fast, right? I think that what the stat is, you've got like 35 sub 3 hour marathons. You've got a 2:38 PR. Like, you've just got wheels. And so taking it out pretty quick usually is going to, I would imagine, feel pretty comfortable. So he took it out with lap splits. And for those who, and Riley, you mentioned maybe the first loop, and Devon, you can confirm, haven't been out there a couple times. First loop is a couple miles, or like 2 or 3 miles longer than the subsequent loops. Is that kind of how that shakes out?
Yeah.
Yeah. So roughly a 20, then maybe 20, 25 minute delta or whatever between the first loop and the others. So you took it out in a 2:54, 2:37, 2:54, 3:01, 3:07. So assuming that first loop was closer to like a 2:25 first 20 miler, you're going out, pretty quick there. And having the history there, you had mentioned prior that you don't typically, maybe the watch is started, but you don't really pay attention to it. You're just kind of like running in the moment unless something cues you to look into it. I imagine then that's the suggestion you got out and yet you felt pretty good. I mean, that was pretty hot.
I mean, it wasn't because I was like miles behind Heather. And
Right.
Marcella.
Because I guess you were miles in second at that point.
Well, the thing is like, I go by mostly effort. And so I even said to AJW when I saw him at the last aid station on the first loop, I said, I feel so relaxed that it's stressing me out. Like, because I'm running 750 pace and I'm like, I actually like scrolled through and my heart rate was like 120. Right. So like, clearly I'm just like,
pedestrian effort,
know, but I also have experience at this race. So I know that like the curve is usually like you kind of have to bank on the hotter parts being slower because it's just going to take a lot out of you. And I just was like, I'm unafraid of that pace. Like, that's world record pace, by the way, but like basically like it's like 13-hour pace if you sustain it, but I'm not afraid of that. And I also like have enough history that I'm like, I know my body well enough to know that I'm comfortable. And if the people in front of me can run this pace, like Godspeed, like if you're going to nail it, like it's going to be an amazing day and you're going to like blow everybody's mind. But I can also like, my race plan was based on like statistical evidence of what usually does well in the race. And like, generally speaking, this year kind of ruined all of that for everybody. But like, I kind of felt like there's only been 2 people and I'm one of them who have run under 15 hours, right? If I go out on sub 15-hour pace, I'm setting myself up to be in a good position. And it just happened to be that I felt really amazing. And I was not racing at that point. I was completely like, my mantra was like, I'm just doing my own thing. Like, if you watch the live stream, you see me coming in and like, I'm stopping to hug Jubilee. The next loop, I'm stopping to have a dance party. Like, I wasn't in a like go mode. I was just running.
Which is the nature of the event. I mean, if you're really rolling at 120 heart rate, I mean, it is that effort, but also maybe also speaks to you kind of living the more of that freedom. You're not coming out and holding yourself toward this is what it's all about and this is what it's about. And like, you're allowing yourself to just relax and be like, you didn't have the same expectation. You could just kind of like chill out and just kind of be in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that this is like the most calm I've ever felt. Like I felt very similar to Umstead, but like Umstead was not coming off the back of like awful number of months, right? So it was like easier to kind of just be like, cool, I'm out here by myself with like no competition. Like it's easier to be calm in that scenario. But I just felt like unvexed, even when like the first gel I took, because I've had to change my diet, I haven't eaten sugar in a month. First gel I took made me throw up. And I was like, huh, okay, guess we're just not gonna eat today. Like, you know, and it wasn't like it usually that would be like, oh shit, like I'm gonna be screwed. And I just kind of was like, well, I'll figure something out, you know, and like the next 2 loops, I like tried to figure out like how not to die. And I found something that was like good enough. Like, I think I definitely feel like my legs, my legs feel great. My legs felt great the whole race. If I had had more energy, I think I could have run faster, but I was like, there is a bonk in there that I'm just going to avoid because I can not take fuel basically, except for some Gatorade. So
wait, oh, Gatorade. All right.
Yeah, blue Gatorade for the win.
Oof, oof, oof. It sure tastes good.
Yeah.
Until but getting to stay down. And then Riley, and you, I mean, you don't have that top end speed. And this is, I mean, in the conversations that I've had with Ellie along the way, and it's like, Riley's really fit. They just ran this incredible race and they're, you know, gonna go after the golden ticket too. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, because it's, I mean, Devon, you've been around the scene long enough where you've seen the scene change, right? There's so many more people that have entered in the past 15, 20 years. And it's different. You know, you get these really fast post-collegiate runners or these fast roadies, particularly in a course like Javalina, where it's not a ton of elevation gain and it's not necessarily as technical as some of the others. I would guess it's hard to compete with somebody like Devon, who's got like a 2:38 marathon PR in that regard. But if you were to try to match that, like, right, go off the front, I'm assuming with her 120s heart rate, you know, yours would have been upper 150s, 160 or whatever, like at that effort, and not so sustainable there. But you crushed. I mean, you were clockwork out there. Yes, you had a fast still opening first loop laps, opening one of 3:01. So still, you took it out and did what you had to do, right? I mean, you put yourself in contention. They weren't too far ahead, and you were right where you needed to be. I think your mom texted me maybe after loop 1, and like, here's Riley. She texted me a photo. Here's the time, and I'm like, well, it might be hot, but they're doing exactly what they need to do if they're really going to go for it. And you were right where you needed to be, kept yourself in check. But then from there, from 3:01, you were 250, 256, 257, 259. For 14:45. Like, in some, yes, there were positive splits but you might as well have been negative splitting out there in terms of like the effort. Like, that was an incredibly consistent and well-run race. So did you have a plan going in, and how'd that play out?
Yeah. So my plan was to be consistent. Obviously, you can always say what you want before 100 miles, and there's a lot that can happen out there. But I knew it was a competitive field, and I knew I didn't want to get sucked into running somebody else's race, especially in the first loop. So sort of like Devon, like, I was not looking at my watch. I was running based on effort. I felt super comfortable in that first loop. And then I don't know if it was the first or the second loop where I ended up running with Casey and Nicole for a while. And that felt good because I know they're really strong racers. They've both done well at this race before. So I was like, all right, I know there's a big field out ahead of me, but I'm running with 2 people who are like really solid athletes and know what they're doing. And I had faith in my ability to finish strong. Like, I have been able to close strong in the past. And so sort of having that in my back pocket, I was like, all right, I think if I can kind of let the race play out as it will, you know, some people maybe are going to blow up. Some people are going to hold it, but I'm just going to kind of run as best I can, keep the effort pretty easy. keep trying to take care of myself. And then once I hit the fourth and the fifth loop, like that's when the race starts, and really try to push it then. So that was the plan going in, and I think I executed it as well as I could have.
Yeah, it sure seemed like it. So nice work. So, Devon, you mentioned recently, it may have been in writing, it could have been in one of the interviews in the shop this morning. I had your interview with Ethan and Ginger Runner, I think, playing just to, but I think that was from like a year ago, or I think it was that earlier this year? I can't remember even when.
I mean, I talked to them last week, so.
Oh, so maybe, did you do a prior one after?
A year ago, yeah. So
okay,
I talked to them after last year's Javelina that didn't quite go so well, and then I talked to them. I was like, it's like an annual exam. Here I am.
Yeah. Right. All right. So it was last year's that I think that I had listened to, but you had mentioned, at least I think it was during that one, that your motivations and relationship with running have changed, if not dramatically. So can you speak a bit to that evolution or what you may have been referencing?
I mean, I have no idea what I was talking about a year ago, but I mean, it continues to change.
Yeah.
I mean, I think especially recently, like I went into Javelina, like, this is just for me. Like, I don't have sponsors. I'm not accountable to anybody. And like, for once in my career, I actually kind of feel that most deeply and like genuinely that like, whatever I do, like, as long as my experience is what I want it to be, then that's what's important. And like, whatever that means for the results, like before it was kind of like, I was like, everybody thinks I'm good, so I have to be good. And like, that can stress me out. And like, by the time I arrived at Javelina this year, I was like, oh, so I was like reading pre-race, like odds and stuff, or like interviews, and I was like laughing that I was like not included in most of them, and I was like, yeah, dark horse status for no reason again. I love it, because it's just freeing to be able to like be in that mindset and then be like, and I'm not on people's radar. Although I do find it ironic, I was told that on the stream when I took over the lead, then everybody was like, oh, we know Devon, like it's all settled now, Devon's gonna win, like, and I was like, okay. So it's just kind of funny. So like, even like when I moved into first place, when I passed Heather, like it almost was like, it didn't change my attitude. It was still like, I'm running my own race for myself, for my own experience, like for everything that I've been through. Like it's nice that effort equals winning at this time, and that like I feel so good, but like I was more happy with how it, like my experience of the race was. And like in the past, I would kind of probably have traded like, like look at Western States in 2016. Like I was miserable, like crying in a chair, not having a fun time. And yeah, I came in third, but like, that's not really a great way to experience a race. And so I've just changed my perspective to be like, I would rather enjoy the experience and like, let that mean whatever it means in terms of the performance, as opposed to like being hung up on what the actual performance looks like.
And if I remember right, just as you were talking, I feel like Chrissy's relayed the same thing in terms of, was it maybe 2019? I can't even remember what year, but her Western where she really threw down too. It's like, yes, but like to what extent, or like to what ends, in terms of what it does, what your experience is. And now that you're the, 40, right? I mean, you've got the experience of years now, and then the mindset does change. And what are we here for? And what am I after? And what does it mean to me? And so, maybe you've already somewhat answered it, but this will be, because with Riley, what are you, 27? How old are you again?
27.
Right. So, which Devon can remember those years, and yeah, kind of, right, and coming at it. So, but this is, I guess, a related, concept or question. So, you had also commented then, Devon, a race doesn't define who we are, and you just echoed that there as well. But then there's also the argument that without a doubt, your competitive and tenacious nature really manifested into the degree of success that you've had in competing. No doubt, I think it's provided you catharsis, given the background that you've had, but also a sense of not only confidence, but like definition in the sport. I mean, you're competitor, like you, man, like you're good. Like, and at some level, that's got to provide some degree of definition or degree of identity, even if that's now changing as you're getting older and maybe after it for certain reasons. But it's must have kind of shaped. Well, I guess that's the question. Has it shaped, or has it just been a reflection of who you are?
I think it's been more of a reflection, because the majority of my best races have also been the races that I have been most genuinely myself and like most unconcerned about competition. So like take Western States 2011, I won my way in a Montreal Ultra Cup back when that existed. And like
the good years,
the good old days. I went into that race with like, I'm sponsored by Solomon. I'm on their first ever global team. Like I feel this huge amount of pressure to like be competitive. And I was like definitely listed as one of the pre-race favorites and all this kind of stuff. And like, honestly, I wasn't that interested in running Western States at the time. It was not, 100 milers are not my favorite. Right. So like I was there for a lot of, so like the competitive aspect was what was leading me. And like, I had an awful experience. I got kidney failure and DNF'd. Like, that's not fun. And so I find when I am very genuine to choosing races that I want to do, I'm not being told to do them. I'm not being pressured to do them. Like when I like choose my own path, like the results show for themselves. Like Umstead, like I think Umstead is a great race and shouldn't be overlooked in the way it is, right? But I didn't go there because I was like, everybody thinks this is great. I was like, no, I want to be a part of this community. They showed up for me. Like I had 4 pacers and 2 crew. I had like 50 people in my DMs when I asked for help, right? Like that's why I went there. And I ran a 14:23. Like, so I think when I truly shine, it's actually when I'm just most in touch with like the way I want to run. And when I'm like trying to be competitive or like really worried about the competition or get caught up in it, I actually tend to not perform as well. So it's just like a good thing for me to like realize and kind of, kind of plan accordingly. So
so it only took us about 20 minutes here before Ellie, starts getting raucous there. So if we could have the moderators in here, try to, yeah. So, and
I don't disagree with her at all, but
and that would be a whole separate tangent. I almost commented the past, I don't know, probably month of like Trails Collective lives. I think it was outside. I don't remember, outside online maybe. Wrote an article on, I think, the UTMB and the series, and I don't even remember the full context at this point, but they basically ended with like how successful it's looking so far in the numbers, and they basically left off in their closing with like, and how did we all miss it or something like that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, who are you speaking for? Like, I'm on here each week, and I don't know, maybe like between 5 and like a dozen voices, and like 99.9% of people could care less about UTMB. They don't now, they never will. And they are these incredibly vibrant communities of trail runners that like are awesome and amazing. And like, what did we all miss? Like, what are you talking? Like, who are you? Yeah. So, all right, the whole separate tangent. All right, so
you can have me back on for that. I'll give you all my opinions.
All right, yeah, let's do it. Let's for sure have a follow up. Riley, bite your tongue, because I got a question for you. No, I shouldn't say that. If you want to chime in, and then I'll ask you the question. So chime in. What were you gonna say? I was kidding.
I didn't have anything to add there.
Oh, well, you looked like you did. All right. So
No.
So like turning towards you then in an extension of what I had just a preface for Devon. So for you've been putting in the past few years just for sure the miles and efforts, getting in top regional finishes. As I mentioned in the opening, often knocking at the door, but unable to really land that top finish in a deep national class field. So whereas races, so with that quote, a race doesn't define who you are, even though I would know that you'd agree with that, but knowing how important this is for you in terms of what you've been trying to achieve in some regard, what does this finish mean to you? To not just access Western State stage, but satisfaction that you just threw down with the best of them and not only held your own, but finished at the top. And not just this year, but that's the third fastest time in history of a pretty deep and competitive field. So what does this race and this finish mean for you?
It definitely is a confidence boost for me for sure. Because now I feel like, yeah, I can play with the big kids. It, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy with how the race went. And I'm obviously excited to be going to Western States, but it's definitely, um, yeah, it feels good to know like I can compete in a competitive field, and I'm not just like, just East Coast good, which I think is kind of unfair to the East Coast. But definitely like a lot of our bigger competitive races are out west right now.
They
So
are. And even, we've got a rich history, Homestead, going back, and Vermont, you've done really well at Vermont, and Vermont for sure goes back in history, but it's not always that deep of a field at Vermont. I feel like you usually get like a couple fast top end runners, and you're looking at the competitive nature of the field. And so, Devon, when you mentioned in terms of maybe getting the cues on a couple of the pre-race, whatever, like people taking votes on whatever was going to be at the top, like Riley, I wouldn't necessarily disagree that they wouldn't have necessarily had you in the mix, because again, you haven't had necessarily the top performances at at a Black Canyon or at a whatever. But at the same time, to your point, like, I don't know, like, I mean, maybe if you did historically, but you being from I feel like the East Coast, the Northeast, some of the races that you've done, like you could be crushing these uber endurance races, whatever, that are more localish, but there's no way they were ever going to give you like any nods in terms of like one to look out for or whatever. And whereas Devon could have been a dark horse, and suddenly they flipped to, like we were in Devon's corner all along. Of course, she's like going to get the win. Like you wouldn't even have been on the radar.
yeah, I don't think I was. I listened to a couple pre-race previews, but I was mostly trying to just kind of not before the race. But I mean, Devon knew who I was. We chatted at the start line, but maybe that's because we have mutual friends.
Which is awesome just about the community, right? Where it's still small enough to still have that. So, Devon, you've written and spoken quite a bit on how rough this year has been in so many ways, and it really has been in so many ways. Do you think you would have gotten to that finish and moment had it not been for the trials and tribulations that this year has brought? And given you finished 16 or so minutes ahead of your prior best at Javelina, I mean, what does that say about the year and where you're at?
I mean, in hindsight, it's like, it's a very romantic way to kind of, square that circle of how awful the summer actually went, But honestly, like leading up to Javelina, like even the week of the race, I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to get my head into this. Like the month leading up was so rough and so emotional with my diagnosis of lupus, and like trying to like be like, I'm going to get my head around the rest of my life while I'm trying to figure out how to race. It's like, that's not a great headspace to be in. But like ultimately, I think what I did was just compartmentalize it and be like, you know what? If I have the opportunity to feel good while running, I want to enjoy the hell out of this, because like there's no guarantees with how I will feel in the future. And so like in a lot of ways, it helped with the way things had gone, because it was like, I had been afraid of like having another bad race and be like, ooh, look, more evidence that the like rest of my life is going to be, I'm super fit and I cannot show up on race day because I have this awful disease. And so to actually have a good day, it was like, that actually motivates me more to like stay on the plan and like take care of the disease and like take my medication and do the diet, because like it just kind of gave me hope after a summer of being like, no matter what I do, I just am dead. So like it did really help. with that. And kind of it gave me back some of the power that the diagnosis had taken away from me, which was like feeling like out of control, because I now am like have a disease that is different for every person that suffers from it and is very like it's just all over the place. And so I went into the race just trying to control my own mind, and like that's something that I felt like I hadn't been able to do after my diagnosis. I just felt like I was going through the stages of grieving. And so to kind of have my run go good and also have my mind be in such a good place the entire time, it was like I don't think that that's like a product of how bad the summer was, but like it's just nice to kind of be like, it's a nice counterpoint to that.
Right. And then you, Riley, as I mentioned, you've been putting in the work here for years, only getting stronger, still hopefully years off your peak. I mean, maybe you're still whatever. I mean, Devon just raced her best javelina, so maybe you got like 13, 15 years ahead of you, which is pretty incredible. You never know what, right? You don't know what next year will bring, let alone 15 years from now, but hopefully it's just incredible things. But what's changed in your training since, as an example, picking up David Roach as a coach and this year versus last?
Yeah. So even before picking up David Roach as a coach, I had started kind of like following some of the free plans that they post on their website and pulling pretty heavily from his style of training. But when I started working with him, I definitely started doing more strides throughout the week, and my hard workouts were harder. But he also like kind of holds me back more. Like if I have a little niggle that pops up, he's pretty quick to say like, just rest, like don't even try to go push it, and take 1 or 2 days off. Whereas before I might've been like, oh, well, let me see if I can just kind of like limp through this. So I'd say, yeah, rest is more rest and intensity is higher than what it was when I was just trying to make stuff up on my own. But I think in the last, like looking at the last like 2 or so years, like I didn't really used to do any kind of workouts. Like maybe if I got inspired, I'd do a workout and then, maybe not for another couple of months. But in the last couple of years, that really changed. And I started doing more speed work. So I guess it pays off to do some speed work more frequently than
crazy talk. How have you gotten this far and haven't did any? I mean, Devon, with your coaching hat on, with Chaucer coaching, you're like, how has Riley even gotten this far and had like no dedicated workouts? Like what's happening here?
To be fair, that used to be how all ultra runners ran. Ultra runners used to just do hella volume, like back-to-back long runs and no speed. And I did that actually the first time I got into Western States. So I got in the fire year. So I got in with 1 ticket in the lottery, but I didn't get to run it. But I knew nothing. I didn't have a coach. And I just remember being like, well, this giant tome says just run forever all the time, the same speed, and you'll do great. And like that, you learn by doing that. That doesn't actually get you where you want to go.
All right. So in terms of getting you to where you want to go and maybe the physiological benefit of things, let me see if I can bring up switch to bringing up a photo here. Bear with me just a minute, because I very much like the image. Need some sort of like, I know where are we going with this?
Where are we going?
Yep, it could be any number of different directions. And when I first bring up the photo, you won't necessarily know what direction I'm going to go with it. All right, let's see. Maybe I can blow this up just a little bit.
Really? Are you talking about the sunglasses, the physiological benefit of amazing?
No, you just hang on a minute. I'm getting there. Let me get back to my show notes so that I can phrase it just as I want to phrase it. All right, I'm ready. All right, so Oh crap! I went out of order. Where'd that? All right, I got it. All right, Devon, do you think that the psychological gain in wearing a shirt with a cat riding a shark with a rainbow coming out of its mouth physiologically outweighs a thin shirt cut up with holes for increased ventilation for the average trail runner?
I mean, I did actually have that shirt available to switch into, depending on my mood. I don't know. It depends on who you are. I sometimes like the benefit of a mental boost of like changing your perspective and putting on a terrible shirt that you bought on Amazon.
That is a wonderful shirt.
That could just combust in the desert sun. Like, I mean, but like I had it in my race bag in case I needed to be like, we're in party mode now. And like, would that be better than a shirt with ventilation for me in that scenario? Yeah, it probably would have a performance benefit.
Uh-huh. That's fair. So you should kind of have maybe both in the drop bag or in the arsenal, depending on just how it's shaken out.
Actually, I was running with a guy named Nathan on the first loop, and he and I had run together the year before. And I had mentioned that I had this shirt, and I was like, it's like my mind shift change shirt. And he was like, that is brilliant. I need to do that next time. And I'm like, yeah, like if you really are like in it and like my race has gone to crap and I'm off my goal, like why not change your perspective, especially at a race like Javelina where like, I mean, how much love would I gotten if I was racing around in that?
Yeah, probably a lot of chafe, but you would have gotten a lot of love.
I have plenty of chafe anyways. Like, it's not like it's going to be that much worse.
That's fair. And then Riley is covered up by the golden ticket, but do you think you're the only athlete, maybe in the history of trail running, that has stood in the podium wearing a pair of hammer-looking pants with a skeleton on them? Well, wait. That's all right. Take your time. Think about it. Rebud. You're muted at the moment. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening.
Makes me feel better about it.
There you are. You're on.
Yeah, sorry about that. I
You're
think
good.
my headphones cut out.
Did you catch the question? Could you hear? All right.
Yeah. So, question about my skeleton pants.
And whether you think you might be the only trail athlete in history to stand on a podium wearing a pair of skeleton pants.
I definitely think I'm the only trail athlete in history to stand on the podium wearing those skeleton pants because I made them.
Oh,
wow. Well,
that's amazing.
Done. That is amazing.
Huh. It was a Halloween costume a couple years ago. And I made all these like bone stencils and spray painted them. And then was really pleased with the fact that they came out sort of like X-ray looking. And I was like, I got to keep this costume.
Wow. That just has a lot more meaning there than I thought that was going to have in the moment. So well done. So, all right. So looking forward, actually, what are any other things that maybe we didn't talk about, like on the day or the course or the event? I want to respect you guys' times. I know we are getting on here. What anything that would be fun though to talk about in terms of how it shook out or the competition, or just maybe things that that kind of went down that were kind of funny, or any funny stories that came out of the weekend aside from passing a man in no pants and a nice hat and such things? Yeah.
I mean, how do you top that?
I'm not sure how you top that.
Yeah, that was pretty classically Javelina, I think.
Yeah. So where does it go from here? You've both accepted, I believe, the ticket there. Devon, are you going to get back to the Grand Slam vision?
I don't know. I hesitate to say like I've decided to kind of do like a year of yes, because then I'm like, people are going to ask me to do crazy shit. But like I had a plan for next year that didn't involve Western states, but I'm going to interview Heather Jackson tomorrow on my podcast, and I was listening to. I love her. I have loved her forever. Like we were Hoka teammates, even though she didn't know I existed, like in 2016. And when I passed her, I was like, okay, just don't be weird. And I like ran by her and I was like, this bump, you're doing great. I was like,
that was weird.
Oh
And
my
she
God.
giggled a little bit.
I was like, but I really was like, oh my God, I love her. So I was listening to a podcast with her, and she's my age, and she's transitioning out of Ironman, and she was just talking about like kind of respecting the opportunity of like, why did she continue to go back to Kona, especially like this year and everything. And I listened to that and I was like, God dang it, I have to do Western States now, because I was like in the car, like I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then I was like, honestly, I don't know if I will have another opportunity while I am in the peak of my career. Like I'm 40, right? Like there is a number of years ahead of me where I can still race really well. I don't know how many, but like, will I have this opportunity again? I don't know. So under that premise, I was like, whatever I thought I was going to do, like, let me just say yes. But like, I'm also in the Hard Rock lottery, and I'm not saying no if I get into that race, right? Like, so at this point, I'm kind of like, let's just kind of open it up and see where it goes versus like the plan that I had. So could be interesting. Like, I'm not saying like I'm not going to do a Grand Slam, but it also could be some freaking weird.
It's good to have options, and it's only
made up
November
craziness.
2nd.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Riley, what I know you're doing you got a little 50K maybe on deck in December, which will probably feel different now with this experience under your belt, but do you have a vision, or at this point you're just like, I don't know either, like this just happened, it's November 2nd, I don't know what next year brings?
Yeah,
why are you even asking me that?
I don't know. I am excited to be going to Western States, and I plan on doing something before then, but I'm just kind of taking this week to be happy where I am right now and then start thinking about the future.
That's good. I like that. I guess half of me feels even like a jerk if you're asking that, because it's like, dude, I don't know, like back off. Let's just enjoy the moment.
I mean, at least you didn't ask us like the moment we crossed the finish line, because that's what people usually do. Be like, congrats, what are you doing next? And you're like,
I'm gonna sit. I'm gonna go eat like, something. I'm gonna just yeah.
Like I said, there's the finish line video they did. I like at some point I'm like, everybody's like, yeah, good job, and I'm like, can I sit down now? Like, that's what I want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ellie, you calling me a jerk there. Well, if it weren't like Ellie crossing the Western States finish line and just kind of sitting down on the track, and
I mean, a track is slightly nicer to sit down on than
like I'm not doing that again. Like that was awful. Like don't talk to me. Let's so Ellie, which you're on and active. Anything else? Any questions that you might have, Ellie, that you would like to ask Devon and Riley? And if you could keep it civil and not drop any like F-bombs on here, or like I am an old white guy. Let's not. Can you go easy on me here?
She's just gonna withhold on you now. She's not gonna say anything. She's gonna act like she's not listening.
Yeah. Well, you both raced awesome. It was cool to be getting the updates here and there. And I am with Riley, knowing I feel like just got to feel so good at the moment. And then Devon, for you too, with the year that you've had, it's just got to feel so good at the moment. And hopefully you can both enjoy the moment. So congrats.
Thank you.
Totally. And thank you for carving out some of your time here this evening. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I can have you both back on another time in the future.
Yeah, I'm happy to come talk.
Oh yeah, we have a follow-up. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. We already have a follow-up topic that I would love to drill into this winter. So yeah, maybe we can do that.
Yeah. So
right on.
Cool.
All right. Well, I will catch you both next round, and yeah, until then.
Thanks.
Right. Yeah.
Bye.
All right. So for those who tuned in live with us this evening, I very much appreciate it. For those who tune in after it is live, thank you so much for weighing in. For those who support what we're trying to do here in bringing us really all together, and particularly sharing some voices and events that may not get exposure otherwise, and for finding inspiration with us. So thank you. And next week, I think there's probably like 4 or 5 events that I will bring on some voices from this past weekend, in addition to the weekend ahead. I'll try to also have hopefully some Beast Coast voices in the mix for some from the World Trail Team and Championship coming up as well. And they should be some pretty fun episodes. So thank you so much. And until then, I am going to go try to catch my kids and wife before bed, and I will check you next week. All right. See ya.